Well, maybe you find yourself at times where you feel like there's this battle going on inside of your head. Maybe it's going on in your head or your heart, and the battle that's taking place is where you have this sense of you know what you ought to be doing, but you can't ever quite make yourself do it. Or you know what you shouldn't be doing, but you can't make yourself stop doing what you know you shouldn't be doing in the first place. And so it causes all this tension inside of us. It just feels like this battle going on inside our heads or our hearts, and you just think, what in the world is going on? It's actually a man who wrote in the Bible. His name was Paul, and he had that same experience. And he described his experience this way. Maybe it's similar to what you feel sometimes. He said, I don't really understand myself. I want to do what is right, but I don't do it. Instead, I do what I hate. And maybe you go, that's me. I resonate with what he's saying. I don't get it. I know what I ought to be doing. I just can't seem to do it. And so it just drives me crazy. He goes on and he says, I want to do what's right, but I can't. I want to do what is good, but I don't. I don't want to do what is wrong, but I do it anyway. One of the things we know about temptation is that it doesn't even necessarily make sense, because the things that we're tempted with most often are things that we're already against. We go, I would never do that. And yet we find ourselves tempted. For example, you're against lying. I mean, all of us are against lying. Your parents taught you not to lie. You teach your kids not to lie. You don't want to work for somebody that lies. You don't want somebody that lies to work for you. And you don't want to have somebody leading the government that's going to lie. You don't want police officers that are going to tell lies. You don't want to marry a person that lies. You don't want your kids to marry somebody that lies. And you don't want to date a liar, and you don't want to have a roommate that's a liar. You are against lying. And yet, you know what happens? We find ourselves in certain situations, and what do? We lie. And we go, what is this? It doesn't even make sense. I am all against lying, and yet somehow to save my reputation, somehow to save a few bucks, somehow to just, we do something we don't even believe in, and we find ourselves telling a lie, and you go, what is that? Where is that coming from? Not that you don't have the right tools to win these skirmishes that you're going to face. The problem is, so often, we don't even think about the tools. The problem is so often we never pick up the tools that God has given us so we can stand up to temptations. All too often, we just kind of figure, you know what, it's not that big a deal. I think I'm going to be okay on my own. And so we fail to pick up the tools that God has given us. And I think what happens to us so often, we think the temptations are going to come in big, huge areas that are life-changing, but so often that's not the case. More often than not, the temptations that we're going to face, the battles that we're going to face, it's not the enormous life-changing things. They're not going to seem that big in the moment. It's just going to seem like small, little, mundane things that are going to trip us up. And it's those little things. It's like either I'm going to choose to get angry, or I'm going to choose to stay calm. It's either I'm going to choose to stay up late at night to finish my homework, or I'm going to choose to come up with a very creative excuse as to why I didn't do it. Or I'm going to choose when I go to the mall to pay with cash, or I'm going to break the promise that I made and actually use a credit card that is already overspent. Or it's repeating an unkind story that I heard, or choosing to say, you know what, I'm going to keep it to myself. Or it's making the choice where you say, I'm going to pass the magazine rack at the airport, or I'm going to stop and I'm going to look and I'm going to linger. Or I'm going to choose to crawl out of bed and exercise, or I'm going to choose to stay in bed and get an extra 30 minutes of sleep. None of those seem like big deals. All of them seem like very small, mundane things. They're not enormous, life-changing decisions. But they're all decisions that all of a sudden we find ourselves. And what's interesting, nobody's going to know what we decide in those moments. Nobody's going to know if you decided to go ahead and get out of bed and exercise or not. Nobody's going to know if you used your credit card or cash to buy what you just bought. Nobody's going to know whether you lied on your income tax or not. And so in the moment, it all just seems small. It's not enormous, life-changing decisions, or so we think. But here's the deal. There's always more going on than what we realize. And there's always more at stake with the temptation than we realize. That what we can see in front of us, and in every temptation you face, the big ones, the small ones, there's always more at stake than what we think. And in the midst of temptation, we think, oh no, it's just a small decision. It's not all that big a deal. But what we begin to discover is every single time there's more at stake than we could possibly even imagine. And so here's what I want you to know. And I think we all already know this. Every time we're tempted, what's at stake is actually our future. Not only is it about my future, it's also about the people that I love. What's at stake in all of these decisions are the people that I love, the people that depend on you, the people that you support, the people that work for you, the people that look up to you. And the reason is temptation is never isolated to just one individual. The effects at stake are the people that you love. There's one more thing that's at stake in the decisions that we make. Not only my future, not only the people I love, but my faith and my confidence in God, my relationship with God is also at stake, because every time we give in and make the wrong choice, we chip away part of our relationship with God. And every time we give in to temptation, what we're doing is saying, no, God, I know that you gave me this desire, and I know that you've got a way for me to fulfill that desire, but I'm going to choose to fulfill it a different way. What if we could develop a new habit? What if we could develop a skill or this new habit where when we find ourselves facing temptation, rather than giving in, we would just step back and go, okay, wait a minute, there's more at stake here. I've got this desire, and it may be an intense desire. It's given to me by God, and the way I'm about to fulfill that desire is a cheap substitute. It's not what, and my future's at stake here, and my family is at stake here, because in the midst of our temptation, most likely we're only going to see what's out in front of us. And in the moment, it's not going to seem like that big a deal, but man, if we could pause and develop this habit, a skill, and say, oh, wait a minute, there's more going on. My future is at stake here. And God says, man, if we could just learn this skill to just pause, to just step back and say, God, help me understand what's going on around me. If we developed a prayer that says, God, teach us. Teach us to pause in the face of a temptation. Help us to realize there's more at stake than what we think. My family's at stake. My future's at stake. My relationship, God, with you is at stake. Help me make wise decisions. May I not yield to the temptations of the devil.